Okay, we're going to talk about the synoptic chart and how you predict waves. And it's really, since I was a kid, wave prediction has just changed so much. I got to learn what we're going to learn now, the synoptic chart, and I learned it well. Did my A-level geography, that's one of the higher levels in your school and stuff, and I really wanted to know how that chart worked, because I was a surfer and I wanted to know how in South Wales I was going to get waves. Yeah? And as I've been going on in my surfing over the years, and 50 plus years I've been surfing, now people rely on wave forecasting sites, Surfline, Windguru, Magic Seaweed, which are great. But people blame these sites going, oh, it was wrong. It is not a human being. These sites work on statistical averages. So often when it's giving you stars and stuff, you get there and it's not what you expected at all. But the sites have great information. But you need to know the synoptic chart, what we're going to learn now, and put that knowledge in with the Magic Seaweed, lineup, whatever it may be, Windguru. Yeah. Put those two things together and you have a much better chance of forecasting your surf. And it might be really important to you, you're going to travel from, Germany down to France for a weekend, or wherever, London to wherever, or you're going on a surf trip abroad and you want to kind of know what's going to come along. So this knowledge now is super, super important, and it's really quite simple too. So the synoptic chart. In our videos, you'll see a video about wave formation. It's called wave formation. And sometimes I think you should look at the wave formation talk first before going to this one. When we're doing our courses in Sri Lanka or in Lanzarote, people get the wave formation, how waves are formed out in the ocean before they get this. Because it just helps you understand how waves are formed. So waves are formed, as we said in that talk, by wind, by a transference of energy of the wind. And we show that wind in pressure systems on a synoptic chart. And those pressure systems look like kind of dartboards. Low pressures and high pressure systems. Now, I ask people on the course often, what's a low pressure area? Is it cold air or warm air? And many people, they'll guess correctly, it's kind of cold air. But if you look at your meteorology books, you'll also see in the center of it, there is a column of warm air. Don't get too confused about it. Think of it as a body of cold air, and your high pressure systems a body of warm and more stable air. But let's see how, firstly, a low pressure system would create waves in the North Atlantic. Now, apologies to any geographers or people in Scandinavia or whatever, this map. This is the type of map we draw on the beach. We do it quickly. We got Greenland, Iceland, UK and Ireland. Ireland kind of went a bit weird in shape today. Scandinavia, and here we got like Europe there, running down France. A little kind of idea, there's Biarritz. Spain and Portugal. This is the entrance to the Mediterranean. Here we've got the start of Morocco, North Africa. We can put the Canary Islands somewhere down by there. Eastern Sea, you've got like Newfoundland up there, Eastern Seaboard, United States, Florida, which looks like it shrank a bit, the Caribbean, and the start of South America down there. Okay, the accuracy is not super important, but I'm going to put a low pressure system in here. What are these lines? These lines are called isobars. And isobars simply show changes in the pressure, in air pressure. And you'll see a number, okay? And that number gives you a barometric pressure. And it's talking about that central point there. And there's a magic number for me as an amateur meteorologist of 985 and below. If it says on my weather chart 985 barometric pressure or below, I know that those winds are strong enough to create waves. Okay? This spins in this direction. Yeah? And so I'm going to put an arrow there to show you the direction that this wind is spinning. Round it goes that way. Go to the southern hemisphere, it'll spin in the opposite direction. Okay. So this is a low pressure system. And this low pressure system is going to create waves. But the funny thing about it, I don't know if you remember when you were a kid in school, they may not do it anymore, I don't know, but we used to, in geography, they used to have something called contour lines. And contour lines were the lines on a hill, and it gave you the height of each line. And you kind of teacher would say, show us which is the steepest part of the hill. And you'd see where the lines were closest to each other would be the steepest part of the hill. It's almost the kind of same rule here. Where the lines are closest to each other is where the winds are blowing at its strongest. And if the wind gets the chance in any storm to blow over the ocean for a long period of time, we can call it fetch. Fetch is two things: the distance from the storm to the land, but also how long the wind can blow over the surface of the ocean. If it can blow over it for a long period, and particularly in one direction, it's got a much better chance of creating larger waves. So as immediately you've got to think, this storm is not creating an equal waves out. It's not like that stone in a pool with rings equally coming out. It's going to have certain strengths of waves from coming different directions. Okay. So we said that where the lines are closest together is where the winds are blowing strongest. So for me, I think from this area here to that area here, or even extend it a little bit, is where the wind is blowing longest, strongest, and from this area here will come the biggest waves, heading down in that direction. Now this 985, let's call it a 965. That's a pretty low pressure. And maybe my amateur weather forecaster is sitting in Britain or wherever, and they go, oh look, there's a 965 on the chart. We should get good waves. But they don't look at the shape. So in fact, look, pointing there, maybe they're going to go to the West Country in Cornwall. Actually, the line is curved. It's not blowing over the ocean for a very long period of time. And also, it's not that strong. The lines have opened up. So in fact, going this way are much weaker waves. And they get surprised. They go, oh, well, I saw a low on the chart. Look at the shape. Now, these things are moving. Yeah? One of the big things about global warming, I kind of believe global warming is a reality, that the direction of these things and the intensity of these things have changed. But, with or without, they travel. They travel, we have weather above us, yeah? But there's another level above that. You see your clouds and your winds and stuff, but above that is another weather layer called the jet stream. And the jet stream lets, in our northern hemisphere and southern, it lets our storms travel in certain directions. So this thing will go that way generally. Now imagine if that, in its journey, twisted that way. If it's twisted that way, suddenly those lines, they're producing the waves to go that way, and these guys here aren't getting much at all. So don't just look at the depth of the low pressure, look at the shape as well. If I had one big onion ring of low pressure here, everybody's getting waves. But often they're not like that. They'll have these kind of different shapes. Imagine a machine gun. It's a kind of a strange analogy. I got a room full of people and I go, okay, well I might hit some of them and some of them I don't. But if I point it at Luca, he's a dead man. So that's exactly what's happening. We've got to look where those waves are coming on. And as your storm progresses, check where are the waves being fired out from. Okay. These things travel. So you can imagine that's a wave creator. And we can talk about this later. But eventually this is going to come over. This is going to bring wind and storm that way. But before we talk about that, there's a wonderful thing that the American Navy did. American Navy, biggest Navy in the world. They start putting these things to protect their Navy all around the world, buoys. And they dropped them all around the oceans of the world. What these buoys do is as a wave passes it, it lifts it up and drops it down. So that could give us a kind of an average height. Yeah? But what very importantly does, here comes another wave, lifts it up, drops it down. And it tells us the time period in seconds between our one wave passing and the other. And the longer the period in seconds, the bigger the waves. So when this thing comes that way, you're going to get storm waves, and it might have a 7-second period. But the computer doesn't understand wave quality. So it gives you 3 stars, an onshore wave, and a 7-second period. You're going, well, how does that work? Or the opposite of it, it gives us, like today, for instance, here in Lanzarote, was 1.5 foot and a 15-second period. I was just talking with my friend then. He was surfing San Juan. He said it was double overhead. 1.5 foot double overhead. The wave period told us that it would be big surf this morning. So start reading the wave period along with the low pressure and high pressure positions. It's a great thing, this wave period. It really will help you to work out the surf for your areas. For instance, I have friends in Holland. If they have a 7-second period, often it's from wind blowing straight down on top of it, and it's perfectly surfable. Okay? Hardly ever do they get like a 15-second period. So it'll depend what part of, the North Atlantic you're in, and we are talking about the North Atlantic at the moment, as to what kind of period works for where you are. Okay. Let's look at the opposite of our low pressure. Let's look at a high pressure. I'm going to put a big high pressure here. Nice big high pressure. And the high pressure spins in the opposite direction. Now the high pressure has got a magic number as well. And this is my magic number. This isn't metrology fact. It's what I feel. 1,010. Between 1,010 and 985, let's go back to our 8, 985, there's kind of nothing much going on. It's kind of this middle end. And often you'll find these things splitting off our low pressures and our high pressures called fronts. If you see a triangle, it's a cold front. If you see a semicircle, it's a warm front. And you can even have 2. They're stuck together, warm and cold. We call that an occluded front. These are wind patterns spinning off. It's funny, the name front. It actually came from a Swedish meteorologist who, during the First World War, he was trying to describe how the warm fought against the cold airs, and he looked at the Germans and the Allies fighting in Belgium and Flanders, went, it's like that. They're pushing against each other. And it was called the Western Front, so he called it a weather front. It's a strange old way that word evolved. So our fronts push against each other. But what does warm air do? It rises. So often our warm air will rise and this cold air will come underneath it to take its place. That's a common pattern. Okay. All right. Now our wind in our high pressure blows in the opposite direction. So here I am. Let's have this chart now. I've got not bad waves coming. I mean, they're not huge. They're not as big as these waves, but they're not bad. And they're coming this way towards France. Kind of fun. Looks kind of, if it's a 965, pretty good surf. 985 might be about here or something. What is the wind today in this area? It's offshore. So it's blowing offshore. Should this rise up and that storm come in to take its place, that offshore turns into our onshore, maybe rainy weather. Okay. This is simply a pattern. Now, if I'd sort of shown that to you straight away and say, hey, this is a weather chart, you go, whoa, that looks really complex. But as you've watched it evolve and grow, you know what's going on. You can see what's going on. A lot of people will say, for instance, oh, you only get waves off low pressures. No, no, no. Here in the Canaries, particularly, we get waves off high pressures, which is really strange. I'll show you now. Here, let's wipe out these little lines here. Often, in the summer, there are no low pressures in the North Atlantic of any wave-creating kind of worth. But you get a high pressure, big old high pressure, and it kind of sits here. It's like lines there. And often, the lines are pretty close to each other in this zone here. Actually, it's called, here we are, now it's spinning that way. We call it, the Canaro called it in the Canaries, El Vento de Colombo, the Columbus wind, because he realized if you came down the kind of coast to here and then you slingshotted yourself, very clever what he did, through this high pressure, let's put H there to remind us. But these winds being close enough together are enough to create waves. Sometimes we'll have our lines super, super tight in this zone here, or we're actually on the other side of this island surfing a place called Arieta, and that's our fetch. It's only from the coast of Morocco to us, but it's enough to create decent waves, you know. So don't think you're always going to get, it's really funny, you go to Barbados, Puerto Rico, they actually held a really good pro contest around the time that Andy Irons passed away. In Puerto Rico, no groundswell, everything off this trade wind, really decent waves, you know. So there are ways that you're going to get waves off high pressures. Now, I have a lot of clients from Italy, some from Greece, from the Barcelona area. I always say you've got much more waves than you think. It doesn't take far, that's not much of a distance, is it, to create waves? So if I can get waves from that part of Morocco to us, you know, 100 miles away, listen, you're in the Mediterranean, you're going to get waves. You'd be surprised, Sardinia gets good waves. You get the Levant blowing up, getting waves on the sides of coasts of Italy. So have a look at your weather start and start reading it. But that's the last thing I'm going to say, is understanding the weather chart is exposure. There's a good game you could play, right? Choose a week and say, right, I'm going to look simply at the synoptic chart and I'm going to guess what's happening in a certain place. I'm going to guess my surfing Holland, or I'm going to guess my surfing Britain, or wherever. And I'm going to see how that chart changes. And I've got to see that chart every day. You can't miss a day. You know, I look at a weather chart, this is my job, every single day. But even if I wasn't doing this and I'm a keen surfer, I want to know what was coming. And I put the chart with my magic seaweed, with my windguru, and I look at the period and I look at the synoptic chart, and very often I could be first one at the surf break. You know, these days it doesn't happen so much because of windguru and magic seaweed. Used to be, how did you know there were waves there? Because I read the synoptic chart. But do that, you sit at home, you're in London, Berlin, Moscow, whatever, and you start just trying to forecast. Then you do your forecast and you put it up against the big wave sites. You know, the magic seaweed, windguru, all that. And start saying, well, when I looked at the synoptic chart, does that work for what I hear? And often you will be a little bit in front of what they're actually showing you. And then find out if you were right. You could go onto a simple surf shop site or a wave cam. Wave cams are really interesting, you know. Wave cams don't work in the middle of the night. It's dark. Wave cams are limited, but they're really good. But you could forecast and then look at your wave cam for a certain beach and see if you're right. Because that's the only way you're really going to learn about weather, is to expose yourself to it day after day after day. And then people start getting it and go, oh yeah, I saw that low. I thought that was coming. Very often the buoys, they can't see something that's not there, can they? The buoy can't go up and down if there's nothing there. So you're watching the low being created, but the wave hasn't got to the buoy yet. So the buoy's not registering anything, but you know it's going to come. We've got the best wave predicting computer in the world in our heads, you know. Put as much knowledge together and you'll be amazed. You know, you're making the most of your petrol money, your flights, you know, and you're picking up surf. I know people with good wave knowledge, they'll actually book to come to my school here in Lanzarote and say, Tim, I can see there's good waves next week. Do you think I should book a ticket? Yes, come. It's that easy in the long run. Okay, have good fun doing it. It's a really fun and it's a great skill to have.